Hello, and welcome to the Megan Taylor Creator Podcast, a show for entrepreneurs looking to grow their business with digital marketing. In this episode, we'll be talking about how to write copy that sells. Let's get started. So in this episode, I just wanted to get on here and talk about copywriting because I've actually started a side business, a copywriting business called Megan Taylor Copywriter. I know I'm really inventive when it comes to coming up with names, but yeah, I decided to start Megan Taylor Copywriter mainly because as much as I enjoy working on Megan Taylor Creative and I will continue to work on Megan Taylor Creative, I think that being an agency and an entity that's bigger than myself, sometimes it can be hard to market yourself in a way that's a bit more personable than what you can do with a personal brand. And I think as well, sometimes people are quite intimidated by marketing agencies. I know that when I first started working at a marketing agency, I was very intimidated by the whole structure and just the amount of clients that they had and the amount of projects that was going on. Whereas if you approach an individual, it's much easier to, I think, start a conversation, especially if it's just, a smaller project that you want to work on. So yeah, if you did want to check out Megan Taylor Copywriter, I'll leave the website that I've created in the show notes. There's actually a couple of blog posts on there already as well. So if you want to learn a bit more about my style of copywriting, then please feel free to go ahead and check that out. And obviously, if you do want to work with me on a copywriting project, you can actually just fill out a form or contact me on Twitter or Instagram. And my handles are at Megan LJ Taylor on both platforms. So I'm just going to get straight into the episode now that I've done the main introductions. Let's get started. Now that we've done the introductions, it's time to actually start talking about copywriting, which is one of my favorite topics because I think it is a very misunderstood topic. Firstly, because I think that people confuse copywriting with content writing, but those two are very different practices that have very different goals. And I just kind of wanted to not only clear up a couple of misconceptions, but also talk specifically about the function of copywriting and why you might need to hire a copywriter. But not only that, I'm also going to be kind of sharing my top tips for business owners who are in need of new copy for their website. That might be because they're planning a launch campaign or they're just running their typical daily social media activities and they really need help on writing interesting captions or posts, depending on the platform, that really resonate with their target audience without coming across as too pushy. Because I think that from speaking to a lot of my clients and just from observing social media, I can see that the main issue people have with writing copy is that they don't want to come across as too salesy or too pushy. But I'm very much in the camp that with the amount of free value that us content creators are giving away, I'm very much in the camp that we absolutely have the right to talk about our products and services as much as we want. But I'm gonna add a caveat there, and that is that you can talk about your products and services as much as you want, but you have to do it in a way that's actually helpful. You have to present them in a way that your target audience will be genuinely interested in. So with this in mind, let's actually define what copywriting is, and then we'll go on to the main tips about how to write copy that genuinely sells and converts and resonates with your target audience. So my main understanding of copywriting is that it's the art of writing words that sell. And that's kind of why I chose that tagline for Megan Taylor Copywriter, because it is true. I think that the difference between copywriting and content writing is that one is supposed to sell, and selling doesn't necessarily have to mean convincing someone to actually buy something. It could simply be convincing someone to change their way of thinking, but it could also be to to sign up to a newsletter or download something for free. You still have to work and sell whatever it is that you're putting out there. You have to convince people that they want it. And I don't even think it's a want. I think the best copywriters, they can actually create an inherent need. They can convince their target audience that they actually need this product or whatever it is that you're offering them. Whereas content writing is more about educating, and there is definitely selling involved in content writing too. There's no doubt about that. But I think that copywriting, it's very much related to sales, whereas content writing, it's much more of a marketing function where you're just trying to raise brand awareness, increase authority, and obviously you do this by educating. But with copy, you're persuading with your words and you're trying to get someone to take a specific action. You're not always trying to do that with content writing. Sometimes you just write a piece of content specifically because you think it will help your target audience. And obviously you do it because you do it in hopes that they will see the value in your content to the point where they start to dig deeper and learn more about your product or service. But selling is definitely not the main aim of content writing, and content writing facilitates the whole buyer's journey, whereas copywriting focuses on that last part of the buyer's journey. I suppose it is very much about getting the customer to make that final purchasing decision. With that in mind, let's actually start to talk about how you can write interesting copy that genuinely resonates with your target audience. I think that my journey as a copywriter has been a long and interesting one, but it's also been very unconventional. Just to give you a bit of background, I spoke briefly about this on the last episode of the podcast, but I didn't really go into much depth. So I've always been writing copy. I've always been writing some kind of sales copy, whether that be like a sales letter, even in my first sales job, or actually landing page copy as well later on in my career. But I've really started to realise that copy is everywhere, and I've really started to understand the core difference between content writing and copywriting and knowing how to present that to my particular audience, because I think that's important. So my main tip for copywriting, the first tip, is remember what it is that copywriting does and to know what your main goal is specifically, because copy is essentially, in my opinion, redundant if it doesn't do what you want it to do. So for example, when I worked at a marketing agency in Reading, I was working on several copywriting projects for a non-profit organisation, and that was kind of my first experience with writing copy that wasn't mainly focused on like actually driving purchases. It was about changing people's viewpoints and getting them to do something specifically to help other people. And I found this, and I think the client and that whole business also, they had a very clear message in place, but I think that they still struggle to encourage people purely because of the subject matter and the conversation topics around that point. When you're trying to get someone to buy something through your copywriting, you really need to remember those objections and think about why would someone not do this? Because I think that, for instance, the non-profit, I don't think they did that enough, at least not that early on in their existence. I think eventually as an agency, we started to notice just through several focus groups and things like that, there was a lack of objection handling. So yeah, I guess the first point is twofold. Focus on the goal, know what it is that you actually want your target audience to do, and write it down from the very beginning before you even start writing your copy, because this will be the main thing that drives the body copy. And then with that, you need to write down the main objections so that you can basically get your prospects from point A to point B. Now, leading on from that, my next top tip is to know what the strongest benefit is, because this will give you the clear reason as to why your target audience would actually cross their metaphorical bridge that you're trying to get them to cross, and take that action. And the important thing to remember here is, and it's such a simple marketing tip, but I'm going to say it anyway, is to not confuse benefits with features. Features are are really important and they have their place. I tend to use features in my copy as basically explaining the benefit, but when it comes to like headline, for example, like if you're writing a landing page and you need to write a hero header, I will normally put the key benefit as the hero header because that's going to be the hook. That's going to be what's going to draw your audience in. Obviously, there's lots of different approaches to landing page structure, but from my experience, including a hero header that kind of acts like a summary of like the entire body copy is just such an effective way to go about it. So I know, for example, we spoke last week about fintech and social media. Fintech businesses really struggle with confusing benefits and I guess confusing benefits with features because they get so wrapped up in their product because they know it inside and out, and I think they get so excited about the technology and like the tangible in air bunnies, because obviously it's not tangible, but you can see in whatever software it is that they're providing that they get caught up in those particular features without actually thinking about, okay, how can this help my target audience? How is this actually going to dramatically change the lives of our target audience? And that is the most important thing. A benefit is something that will influence the transformation, and in turn that's going to be the thing that really turns people onto your product. Now that you've identified the most important benefit, it's time to expand on the benefit and give some more detail into what it is that benefit will do. And here is where I think you really need to start leveraging some classic persuasive writing techniques, because it's not just going to be enough to say this benefit does this. You need to say it and present it in a creative way that's going to convince your target audience. So things like social proof. I love using social proof, but I think using it strategically and using testimonials that specifically talk about how the benefit has actually changed someone's life, that's going to be really important to actually getting someone to understand exactly what this benefit will do for them. But also I think that to accomplish this, questions work really well. I think obviously with questions in particular, you want to use them in a way that's actually going to get your target audience to come to the conclusion that you want them to, because I have worked on a number of projects where the facilitator of the project has gotten very excited about the prospect of using questions as a way to kind of get the mind of the reader going and thinking and encouraging them to think about the topic at hand and what their life might look like if it's different. But just make sure that you answer the right questions basically, and you don't actually accidentally do the opposite of what you plan to do and make your target audience come to the wrong conclusion. Because there have definitely been instances in my career, and I'm sure lots of other copywriters' careers, where either the client that they've been working with or you, because of misinformation or whatever, have actually asked the wrong questions, and that can impact things like conversions and just how effective your copy is in general. So speaking of persuasive writing techniques, this is a separate tip altogether, but a really good way to convince your readers to take action is actually to implement some kind of scarcity in your copy. And scarcity could be anything from one-time offers to limited edition products and things like that. Just anything that is going to make the audience think, oh, I need this now. Because if you implement scarcity, then it adds like extra value on your product, because the audience will feel like it's a limited supply, and it's not always a limited supply. But if it's a specific offer that's just too good to miss, then your target audience will be more inclined to actually go for that purchase a lot quicker than what they would have done if you hadn't have included some kind of scarcity. So following on from scarcity, the most important thing to do at the end of your copy is actually to tell them, I guess, what would happen without this product or service, without, tell your target audience what to do if they don't take that action straight away. This is really important, mainly because we, as a species, I suppose, we want to work as much as possible essential to actually avoid any kind of discomfort. And obviously your business is supposed to solve a pain point. So if you can show that, hey, if you don't get this product, you're going to continue to live in this particular way, you won't get this transformation, then that's going to be a really powerful way to kind of wrap up why your product is so important and so instrumental, or could be so instrumental in your target audience's lives. Finally, with copywriting, I like to actually include a summary. A summary can be just a short paragraph, usually 4 to 5 sentences, or it could actually be just a bullet pointed list of everything that you've mentioned in the body copy. And this is not obviously the final stage. Final stage is the CTA. But I just think that reminding your audience about why they should buy from you is just going to implant that seed in their mind. And obviously that's repetition. That's a persuasive writing technique that you're using. So it just gives a little bit of edge to your copywriting. And also I think I like things to be very neat and tidy, and I don't like just finishing a landing page on a sentence where it doesn't make sense. I like everything to be wrapped up. So I think having the key benefits, and then the next thing, which is obviously perhaps the most important thing, including a strong CTA, is a fantastic way to finish your landing page or whatever piece of copy it is you're trying to write. You can definitely implement these tips into things like social media captions and email newsletters as well. Absolutely. Even with ads, obviously on a much smaller scale due to the limitations of ads. But yeah, CTAs are so important in actually driving conversions, because people need to be told what to do sometimes. And the most important thing to remember with CTAs is that you need to ensure that the language that you're using is very simple. This is not where you want to be introducing complicated terms or jargon or anything like that. You want to spell out in the simplest way possible what the reader needs to do next in order to take the action that you want them to take. Don't leave any room for confusion, because if you do and they can't find or they don't understand where they need to go, they just won't do it. So obviously don't do it in a way that's actionizing, but do it in a way that's kind of very straightforward and easy to understand. And yeah, I guess you can use things like power words as well, just to kind of give your call to action that little bit of oomph as well. But yeah, make it very simple here. So that's it. That's everything that I have for you in this episode. I know it was a bit of a rambly one, but I think that the Megan Taylor Creative Podcast is definitely going to be a freestyle episode, kind of chat show where I just sit and talk with you guys. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying expressing my thoughts and showing my personality a bit more. And yeah, it's great as well just to have another kind of content type that I can throw into my mix. So to wrap up this episode, if you wanted to work with me on a copywriting project, you can find me on social media at Megan LJ Taylor on Twitter and Instagram, or you can go to megantaylorcopywriter.co.uk and fill out one of the forms over there. If you did like the show as well, please follow us on Spotify, or if you're listening over on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Thinking about adding some more content outside of this podcast onto that YouTube channel. I just haven't quite figured out what my strategy is for that yet. And yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. I'm really looking forward to it. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Megan Taylor Creative Podcast. Please support the show by sharing the podcast on social media or heading to our Ko-fi page. I'll leave the link in the show notes. If you like this podcast and you want to work with Megan Taylor Creative or Megan Taylor Copywriter, please message me on social media or visit either one of those websites. Again, I'll leave them in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.